The crypto community is a powder keg of political energy.
I'm Eric Wilson, managing partner of Startup Caucus, the home of campaign tech innovation on the right. Welcome to the Business of Politics show. On this podcast, you're joining in on a conversation with entrepreneurs, operatives, and experts who make professional politics happen every day. We're talking with Tyler Whirty, founder of HODLpac, a PAC for crypto voters that is also a crypto native organization and community governed. Don't worry if you don't know what some of those words mean or mean together in combination. We dive into that and more in our conversation. Let's get to it. Tyler, before we go any further, crypto is still a new concept, so I want to make sure that we have a shared understanding. Give us your best overview of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology and Web3, and I may jump in and ask you to explain some terminology along the way.
Yeah, of course. So thank you, Eric, for having me. This is a big fan of the show, so I'm excited to talk about crypto and its application to politics. So just to answer your first question, like what is crypto? That's a huge question. So many, people that have like dipped their toes in crypto and Web3, find themselves falling down the rabbit hole, and it leads to so many different, topics and avenues. But I'll hopefully give you a good overview. So, a couple key concepts: blockchain, cryptocurrency, Web3. Blockchains refer to, this novel kind of database, basically. Blockchains represent our peer-to-peer networks where a decentralized ledger keeps track of data. And that enables what is now known as Web3 and differs from things like Web2 in that there's no central company or actor that's storing the data and controlling and kind of gatekeeping that data. So blockchains enable a lot of things. They enable digital native peer-to-peer payments, so transfers of value.
So Tyler, the right way to think about blockchains are sort of a database. So just like this podcast is stored on a database, and our websites are built on databases, and all the applications we use are built on databases. Instead of that being stored and controlled by, maybe it's hosted on my own computer or I host it to the cloud, it's actually hosted on numerous other computers around the world, these other peers on the network. So at its core, blockchain is this new type of database technology. And just like with, let's say, HTML, I can build many different types of websites. With this type of database, you can then go build many different types of applications. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, blockchains at their core enable, a network of computers to come to a shared consensus about, the state of the blockchain, which again is storing data. So if Bitcoin, for example, that allows a network of people to come to a consensus around who owns Bitcoin, the token, the cryptocurrency, and allows the transfer of value as a result. Now, other things like Ethereum allow other types of applications to be built on top, and you can get into things like NFTs and DAOs, which are other kind of concepts that I'm sure other people have, or that the listeners have heard of. But yeah, that's the essential kind of understanding of what a blockchain is. It's a shared consensus over a set of data.
And so we, just to really spell this out, folks, the reason that these databases, these blockchain ledgers can be open to the public, everyone can have a copy, and yet they still maintain the integrity of the data that they're recording is through cryptography, right? So I have a set of digits that can unlock my data. Other people can see sort of the public aspects of that. And that's why we call it cryptocurrency, right? Because it's secured with cryptography, just like securing email, any other sort of online security that we're familiar with. And so Bitcoin is probably the most well-known application of blockchain tech, but not the only one.
Correct.
So what do we mean when we talk about Web3?
So Web3 is kind of the new version of the web that's enabled by blockchains, right? So another kind of key concept here, kind of shorthand thing of way to understand this is that we're moving from platforms to protocols. So you mentioned email, right? Email itself is a protocol. It's a agreed upon set of rules and code essentially that allows people to send emails to each other. And it doesn't matter whether you're using Gmail or Yahoo Mail or whatever else. It all works together. It just has a different front end, right? So that's a great way of kind of understanding like what blockchains enable. It's protocol based, so everyone's agreeing on an underlying set of concepts and technology and using the same protocol, and then building applications on top of that, which are inherently interoperable because of because everyone's using the same blockchain. That unlocks open source development and people contributing and building different projects. It unleashes creative energy, creative destruction, and all that good stuff. All that things that that propel us to innovation. Whereas the platform era, the kind of the Web 2 era, you're reliant on one company to build that new feature or build the new experience or whatever else, and they own all the data that comes from that. Whereas in Web 3, it's open season. You can go ahead and you can build whatever you want using the concepts, and it pushes things forward, and everyone builds on top of each other. So this is really it's the future of the web, and the future is kind of here now. Web 3 is thousands of developers and billions of dollars are being devoted to building this new internet.
Yeah, so I hope that our listeners, if you may be skeptical of cryptocurrency or really haven't spent time to look into it, or just unsure of the whole idea, I hope they walk away with an understanding here that it's not just Bitcoin and assets on the internet, NFTs, but there's a whole world of applications that really haven't been tapped into yet. And so, as folks that listen to the show or working on campaigns, talking to voters, you run HODLpac. And so explain for us what a crypto voter is and what are the issues that they care about.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think the crypto voter is an emerging concept. I mentioned the rabbit hole that so many people fall down when they kind of discover crypto and get more into it. When you come out the other side, you have some level of crypto voter in you, right? Which is you care about certain issues that affect this new paradigm, to use the classic word. So, what are those things? Some of them are digital privacy, right? So the way you kind of interact with Web 3, you're doing so through a wallet. It's not Eric Wilson's account with Facebook, that's hooked up to your email and maybe your phone number and all that kind of stuff. It's instead you are working out of a MetaMask or something which is just a browser extension that might be able to be traced back to you in certain ways, but there's a certain pseudonymity or anonymity to it, and that, as many listeners here know, like has some friction with certain parts of the current kind of regulatory framework for the internet or for online commerce or what have you. So like those things matter, right? I think there's other more tactical issues, right? For like the use of cryptocurrency in everyday life. Cryptocurrency isn't like taxed efficiently or kind of like on par with other currencies, like if you were going to use euros in the United States or something. So there's tactical issues, but there's also just these big picture of like allowing individuals to have the choice to kind of participate in this new ecosystem, without running afoul of like laws made for other times and circumstances.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of what the crypto community is fighting right now is, let's not stifle innovation. Let's not be skeptical of something just because it's new. And I think you're seeing different states adopt different postures of who's friendly to crypto. The federal government is taking a look. So it's definitely in the mix in regulation and politics. And so obviously people are going to vote based on that. One of the things that makes HODLpac unique is that it's governed by the community of supporters. How in the world does that work?
Right. Yeah. So, there's this concept, and I think I mentioned it earlier, this concept of a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. It's a kind of a derivative concept of what like of what Web3 enables, which is true, digital ownership. If you own a token that uh, you know is granted some type of governance rights over um, either an entire decentralized application, something like a Uniswap, right, which is like an exchange protocol in Web3 exchange protocol. Um, then if you own Uniswap tokens, you have a vote in the governance of that protocol.
Got it. So instead of someone just paying their dues and being a member in the pack, they are also almost like they're a voting member of how the pack is run.
Right. Well, so that, yes, and I'm the first to admit the difference between HODLpac's community governance and the example I used, like owning a uni token and having a governance token over a protocol. They're very different concepts. If HODLpac was completely on chain and run by smart contracts, and there was no human element to it, that I would be more comfortable saying that yes, HODLpac is a DAO. And I think but people are kind of loose with that term, right? So they say that things are DAOs when there's they're not true DAOs in the sense of the word, but that's kind of like a your own purity test based on how you think about those concepts.
Right. And I think one of the things that's really important here is that there are always going to be degrees or shades of how radically the technology gets applied. I mean, just folks may be familiar with the Constitution DAO, which was this online effort to buy a copy of the Constitution of the United States when it was up for auction. I think they fairly called themselves a DAO, but when you look into how it was actually structured, they had to have people in the real world working with the auction house, making sure that the assets got verified and figuring out what they were going to do with it. It's just not, there are some upward limits to, yes, totally digital protocol can be run by a group of people, but things that interact with the real world are going to have that hybrid approach.
That's right. Yeah. So, and we're in the early innings of figuring those types of things out, but I think that's a great example. So HODLpac kind of fits into that camp, right? I mean, I would love to build a fully on-chain pack. I think that's really cool. And, wink, wink, maybe
I think the FEC would have some issues with you.
Potentially for sure. But, it's still an interesting thought experiment and an interesting kind of goal. But anyway, yeah. So HODLpac, it's playing with these concepts of a community governed, digitally native political organization might look like. If you're able to build that, that has some advantages, right? So NFTs, right now, a lot of people think of those as, they picture the Bored Apes, right, of Bored Ape Yacht Club, or they picture some other kind of silly profile picture. But really what NFTs are, when you're interacting with Web3, it's wallet based. You're not necessarily signing up anywhere and giving over your information. But so NFTs, that you hold in your wallet for being a part of HODLpac, right? Or being a part of Constitution DAO, or being a part of, Ukraine DAO, right? Where they raised a bunch of money from a Web3 kind of crowd fund to send to Ukraine to support, the war effort. Those are kind of digital identity markers, right? Like you collect these NFTs, they create your digital identity. They add to the, the multi-layered, sense of digital self that Web3 kind of enables. And I think that's really interesting, right? And of course, politics is such an awesome, application of that concept, in my opinion, right? So many people, I mean, for better or for worse, nowadays kind of hold
make politics their identity, right?
Yeah, for better, exactly. They part of their identity is their political identity, and the groups they align with, the ideas they support. And I think NFTs, as we kind of move more into a Web3 version of digital life, NFTs for politics are going to be kind of what helps people kind of create that identity, right? And I think that's just we are in the early innings of this, but I think it's such a fascinating concept. Some people have to be working on this.
Absolutely, and so even at this early stage, how are we seeing candidates and elected officials reach out to crypto voters?
So crypto voters, I didn't mean to minimize them, right? I think the crypto community is a a powder keg of political energy, and we've seen it pop up several times in the last few years. whether it be at the end of the Trump administration when there was a Treasury Department move to restrict the use of self-hosted wallets, which is the concept that we've been talking about today. Or in the infrastructure bill fight last year when there was some anti-crypto provisions, the crypto community has rallied behind those, or rallied in light of those things, and set the record for Treasury Department public comments, and sent something like 50,000 calls and emails to members of Congress and senators around the infrastructure bill fight. So there's this latent and well, not even really latent. There's this real organized kind of hive mind energy in the crypto community, and that it has been channeled into politics several times over the last few years. And I think as a result of that, and also as a result of this is a newly kind of wealthy class, right, in American society. A lot of politicians have taken notice, and they've reaching out to the crypto community, and leaning into learning about issues that matter to us, right? And I think that's been really cool to see, and it's been on both sides of the aisle. I think there's a kind of a different reasons for different types of politicians on why crypto is appealing and why Web3 is appealing. But the idea certainly behind HODLpac is to get as many politicians and policymakers to kind of engage and learn about these issues, because I think once you do kind of dig in and start learning about it, it's hard to be staunchly against it.
Right. You're listening to the Business of Politics show. I'm speaking with Tyler Whirty, founder of HODLpac. We're talking about the future of blockchain technology in politics. Now, Tyler, you alluded to NFTs a little bit earlier, and I'm certainly excited about all the things that Web3 has to offer, especially when it comes to politics. What are some applications that you're eager to see that maybe we aren't ready for yet, or just over the horizon? I guess, in other words, what should people be looking out for when they see it next?
Yeah, that's a great question. We could talk about NFTs for the whole podcast, but I think just to return to that, NFTs, they are community building technology, right? And what is politics but building community? Certainly on the campaign side, that is the goal.
So yeah, let me just jump in here and say NFTs, non-fungible tokens.
Thank you.
So instead of like a Bitcoin where my Bitcoin is the same as your Bitcoin, the NFT is a unique digital asset. Most people are familiar with them as sort of these profile pictures, but they can represent so much more. So that's what an NFT is, and so I'll let you keep elaborating on how they might be used in politics.
Yeah, sure. And I think you can just kind of say tokens as well. I mean, a lot of NFT, like the real difference between regular kind of crypto tokens, if you will, and NFTs, there's just a couple lines of code, right? But yes, they, so to talk about NFTs in politics, they are community building technology. So, I'm sure there's a lot of, Twitter users listening right now. You've probably seen, profile picture NFTs, on Twitter. Just think about the power of that in a political campaign. And Facebook and Instagram are integrating NFTs soon as well. So, instead of just donating to a campaign, you donate and you get an NFT and you put it in your social media, and then all, that has just advertising and other benefits for the candidate or for the organization that's using that as kind of a fundraising tool. We've talked about DAOs. I think that's fascinating, right? Like if there's a future where a lot of, spontaneous kind of political organization can happen just like online without somebody, certainly there's always kind of leaders and stuff like this, but DAOs will enable, spontaneous kind of political activity and organization by, individuals. And, is that the future of kind of grassroots advocacy? Maybe there's an element of that in there. Of course, now, right, another way to think about it, like just speaking right to the political, operators that listening, of course, just accepting crypto assets, on your campaign is a good way to like having another, source of funding, right? So it's just leaning into Web3. I think there's not a whole lot of downsides if you're able to do it in a compliant way and doing it smartly.
And I think that there's a really important thread here between what's happening in Web3 and the trends that I'm seeing with campaign technology. I often emphasize the fact that we are seeing more technology and software following supporters rather than campaigns. So, great example of this on the right is WinRed. You have as a donor, an account with WinRed. Other campaigns plug into that. On the left, Mobilize. This is their event platform. You have an account with Mobilize, and then other campaigns advertise their events on Mobilize. And so this ownership layer that Web3 is starting to bring into play is going to really accelerate that trend. And as eager as I am about all of this, you said it yourself, we're in very early innings. It is uncertain regulatory ground sometimes with crypto. It's difficult to really use this. I've been locked out of a wallet before, an expensive mistake to make. It is not consumer grade technology yet. What needs to happen before we see the transformation of politics by Web3?
Great point and great question. So, I think for Web3 to transform politics is going to take tools that make that easy, right? And tools, and so that's answer one. Answer two is, Web3 will transform politics while it's transforming everything else, right? So, I think digital life is going to change a lot over the next few years.
Yeah. I like to think about it as Web3 and blockchain is the technology. And right now we're very much at the not hobbyist phase, but you have to be an expert. It reminds me a lot of the early days of the web, where if you wanted to have a website, you had to know HTML and being able to host. And fast forward to today, we have all these DIY website builders, and they make it very easy, but they're still on HTML. And people who care to learn about HTML and CSS can build things on their own independent of other folks, have much more autonomy. And I think we need to get to essentially the drag and drop builders of Web3.
Right, right. But the promise is that even if there are tools that make it easier, the drag and drop of Web3, if you will, which I think is a interesting concept, it won't mean sacrificing your digital sovereignty, if you will. Right, which would, well, hopefully, right. I mean, that's what a lot of people in the space are working towards, to make sure that we don't have a kind of re-aggregation of again, I'm using this term digital life because I think it really does kind of it is so all encompassing that digital life is a good way to describe it. That we don't want just a new Facebook, right, or a new kind of banking
Right.
system. We want to restore, create a new version of the web where it's more decentralized and more, it has more self sovereignty and individual. But yeah, there's going to be trade offs, and luckily there's a lot of smarter people than I working on like these concepts for general applications. I'm just thinking a lot about their applications to politics.
Right. So, Tyler, if someone is interested in learning more about Web3 after listening to our conversation, what are some of the best ways for them to get started?
Yeah, so love this question. So I have three things for listeners. Top of mind, A16Z, the venture firm has a collection of writing and videos and stuff on their website called the Crypto Canon, CANON. So I recommend that. That has a lot of good information. Variant Fund, which is another Web3 focused venture firm, has a lot of good writing on their site about this concept of the ownership economy, which is something that the Web3 is enabling, right? Ownership and like more widely distributing ownership of web applications and all the good stuff that's being built, right? So and much more, right? Like this is a concept that we've been talking about. So I would point them in that direction. And then if they're interested in more policy or politics related stuff, then I would point them in the direction of Coin Center and the Blockchain Association, which have really good material on some of the policy issues related to crypto.
And I'll recommend Rabbit Hole, I think it's rabbithole.gg, as a really good hands-on resource that sort of guides you through, okay, here's building a wallet, here's completing a task, here's voting in a DAO. So folks who are really interested in getting hands-on on what it has to offer in a fairly low-stakes way, that's another great resource. Tyler, you're obviously working on some tools to help campaigns and PACs tap into the power of Web3. What's another startup that you'd like to see in the political Web3 space?
Yeah. So I would say that if anybody's thinking about these things, I want to talk. So please reach out at Whirty on Twitter. Maybe we can put that on the show notes or
It'll be
something
in the
like
show
that.
Notes for sure.
Amazing. So if anybody's thinking about these concepts, I want to talk. There's very few of us that are, and I'm hopefully, this podcast can spark some more people and spark some ideas. So I would say that, that, and then, I would just, I would love to see more startup organizations, right? I think there's if you're a young person listening to this and, you want to run your own 501c4 or PAC or, other type of organization one day, why not build it on Web3 rails, right? Let's push this and push it forward, build the next generation of K Street, of think tanks, of
Right.
whatever in DC. Like, let's build DC in the metaverse. Like, just kidding. But I think there's something to that. I'd love to see more, kind of policy entrepreneurs, if you will, start to think about how they can incorporate this into their toolbox.
And Web3 really makes it easier, right? That's the idea, to create these types of organizations. That's our goal, to eliminate some of these gatekeepers that have made it historically difficult to administer an institution like this. So, Tyler, you've given us a lot to think about, a lot of homework to do. I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Folks can learn more about Tyler. I'll link to his Twitter account as well as to HODLpac. And remember to share this episode if it made you a little bit smarter, if it gave you something to think about. We also appreciate your subscription wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you've been listening for a while, be sure and leave us a review. That's also really helpful for reaching new listeners and trying to get more people into our conversations about innovation and new technology for campaigns. And now you can join our email list at our new website, businessofpoliticspodcast.com. You'll get email alerts anytime there are new episodes, and you'll get to see transcripts, show notes, and see all the episodes you may have missed. So do check out our new website, businessofpoliticspodcast.com. With that, I'll say thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.